Hi, I'm Rabbi Daniel Lappin, and I love the questions that you send in to my website. Here's a great one. Rabbi, lately, almost whenever I meet salespeople and also socially, people extend their hands to shake. As a woman, I do not want to shake strangers' hands. Recently, a car salesman approached my husband and then me. I kept my hands behind my back and I smiled at the salesman. He asked, "Do you not want to shake my hand?" I said I was in covenant with my husband and do not shake hands with anybody. However, I do not want to hurt people's feelings. Do you have a polite kind of way of avoiding the handshake without going into detail? I'd appreciate a tool for this new lunging intrusion. Thank you. And that's from Catherine. Very well put, Catherine. And I've got to say that that is not a car salesman who is on his road to great success. To draw attention to it and to challenge a customer in that way, bad idea. So those of you in the wonderful profession of sales, take a lesson from that. Not a good way to handle things at all. But we've got two competing concerns here. One is not to hurt somebody's feelings, and it's possible that that car salesman's feelings were hurt, maybe. We want to avoid hurting people's feelings, but on the other hand, just as importantly, or maybe in these days, maybe even more importantly, and that is what you so correctly called protecting the marriage covenant, protecting the covenant with your husband. And let me start off with the first one. Look, it's very important. There's no question about it. You remember the time when Abraham saw three strangers coming to his tent, and he wasn't even feeling well that day, but he nonetheless, jumped up to greet them, and God was talking to him at that point. And he even then at that moment says to God, and this isn't always clear in the English translation, he said to God, "Excuse me, I've got to go and greet these people." God wants us to treat one another with respect and with compassion and with consideration, of course. However, there is the question of male-female relationships, and nobody can overestimate the power of touch. That was how God created us. God created us that the passion that a man and a woman feel for one another is enormously accentuated by contact. And it was always understood that the prerogative for initiating that contact was the woman's. It was her decision whether she wished to shake hands or not. To this day, in as much as it's of interest, the Queen of England is always the one in all her interactions to initiate contact or not. It's considered to be extraordinarily bad taste for someone being introduced to Her Majesty to put out his hand. And so it should be to this very day. In other words, skin-to-skin touch is so significant that for a man to put out his hand to a woman is really audacious and somewhat rude, because she should have the ability to decide whether she wishes for that. Now, you are absolutely right to want to avoid it. Let me just tell you something quickly about how we worked with our children. Susan and I are blessed with 7 children, and I'm sure this isn't true for any of your kids, but our children squabbled for a number of years until they got a little bit more mature. And whenever we would hear of a fight, it was always along the lines of he started, she started, he did it, he pushed me, he shoved me. We said, "Did you really punch him first?" Well, yeah, but it was just soft, it didn't hurt. Here's our rule. Whoever touches first is guilty. We do not want to get into discussions of how hard you touched. Was it a pat or a push or a shove or a punch? None of that at all. We do exactly the same thing in the area of male-female relationships. It is so incendiary, it is so incredibly powerful that we set up a rule at the outset: no physical contact at all. And you know what? It's a real good rule. If your husband travels on business, it's very comforting and very worthwhile for you to know that he doesn't have any physical not even a handshake and not even a hug with any woman other than you. That's a good thing. And similarly, in your case, it's exactly the same way. I think you explained it beautifully to the salesman. I don't think it needed anything additional. Simply saying that you don't shake hands with men. Simple, that's done. That's what my wife does, and that's what I do as well. It works just fine. Don't worry about it. Be confident in who you are and in your faith and in your covenant. I'm Rabbi Daniel Lappin, and I wish you good times in your family, in your friendships, in your faith, and your finances.